Senator Grassley.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for continuing this committee's work on PBMs. Something ought to get done this Congress, considering the fact that there's already a bill out of Judiciary, a bill out of Commerce. Senator Sanders is talking about getting a bill out of the Help Committee. The House Committee is already working on this issue. I believe it's our duty to understand how the pharmaceutical supply chain is working and what we can do to improve it. In 2019, this committee held a hearing with PBM executives, and we worked to advance a bipartisan bill to shed more light on PBMs and drug companies. The Inflation Reduction Act took big steps to reduce drug prices, but there are approximately 30 provisions in the Grassley-Wyden still not law that would establish more accountability in the drug pricing world, including PBMs. The current drug supply system is so opaque that it's easy to see why there are many questions about PBM motives and practices. In 2018, I pressed the Federal Trade Commission to investigate PBMs. Last year, the FTC began studying PBMs, and I'm not waiting. We can't wait for FTC to issue their report. The Judiciary and Commerce Committee have passed PBM bills that I'm working on with Senator Cantwell. Senator Cantwell is also on this committee. The prescription drug pricing for the People's Bill requires the FTC to study pharmaceutical intermediaries, including vertical integration, and issue a report and recommendations to Congress within 1 year. This bill has passed the Judiciary Committee on a voice vote. The PBM Transparency Act has advanced out of the Commerce Committee, a bipartisan vote of 18-9. This bill puts sunshine on PBMs and saved taxpayers $740 million. I pursued bipartisan legislation, held hearings, and conducted oversight. In the Grassley-Wyden 2-year investigation into insulin price gouging, we found that the PBM scheme encourages drug makers to spike the drug list price in order to offer greater rebates and in turn secure priority placement on covered meds, and all at the expense of many patients. This especially impacts individuals who are uninsured, underinsured, and on high deductible plans. Recently, 3 insulin manufacturers announced that they were lowering list price on their insulin products. I believe a key way that we can solve high prescription drug prices is to have more transparency. And those on the panel, one on the panel raised a price about it being scapegoat. I think they've created their own scapegoat environment because of the lack of transparency. If you want people to understand what you're doing, and you're playing a very important role in this whole business of getting pills from manufacturer to the consumer, then why not have transparency, and then you don't have any problems with public not understanding what you're doing. So my one and only question will be to Ms. Van Nuys and Mr. Levitt. The Cantwell-Grassley PBM Transparency Act requires transparency reporting to shine sunlight on prices and fees. Why is PBM transparency important to ensuring taxpayers and patients are getting the lowest drug prices possible?
I think transparency is an essential first step because it gives researchers like me, regulators like the federal government, the opportunity to understand the bigger picture. But more importantly, that kind of transparency is actually going to provide participants in the markets with information about the true prices that they're facing. And when they have information about the true prices that they're facing, they can make better economic decisions and they can choose the highest value opportunity. So I think it's an important first step. I think it will help in at least those two ways.
Mr. Levitt.
Thank you. It is our contention, based on information we've seen in litigation and how we studied the market, that there's a huge percentage of the list price of drug that is retained by the PBM and the PBM rebate aggregator. Transparency would shine the light on that. It's okay if PBMs make some money, but if it's 20 or 30% of the list price of a drug, that's a problem. And if we're able to shine that transparency on those rebates, we can actually lower the list price of drugs for all Americans. Pharmaceutical companies could literally charge less and earn the same net price. Plan sponsors, including the government, Medicare and Medicaid, and private employers could pay a lower price for drugs, and pharmacies could stay in business because they could get a reasonable reimbursement rate.
I thank my colleague, and next is Senator Cornyn.